Okay, and now it's time for another installment of what has fast become the most popular segment here on the channel, Ring IQ Hate Mail.
Guy who goes by the name Legendary Boxing. Big Clarissa Shields supporter, Clarissa Shields apologist. Didn't like my take on Kay Scotch, her opponent for this weekend that most boxing fans don't really know. He said Kay Scotch is the unified champion at 160. Lonnie Daniels...
What's this guy doing, reading a wiki?
...was a two-time champion and knocked out Jadeja Green to become a three-time champion. Danielle Perkins went on to become a champion by knockout. That Clarissa has to talk up a unified champion for it to mean something is a pathetic and shitty boxing take.
No, I think you're a pathetic and shitty person that you still come here to argue about the same fucking things.
Same fucking person all the time.
Like you live under a rock, or like you're stupid or something. All those fucking broads that you mentioned, the average boxing fan, forget about the casuals because they don't know them. Even the hardcores don't know them.
And you know that.
So Clarissa has to talk them up to people who are not familiar with these fighters. You can't pretend that people know who they are.
They don't.
On the subject of Kay Scotch, initial reactions to the opponent, once people started looking her up, that she's only got a grand total of 7 fights.
That's it.
And at 42 years old, you telling me that she's a unified champion is just a testament to how barren and empty these divisions are, that a fighter with only 7 fights can still end up with 2 alphabet titles, even after losing to Desley Robinson, once the unified middleweight champion, just like Kay.
The same Desley Robinson that Tam Tebow just beat up. Tam, who only has 5 fights.
Tam beat Desley, Desley beat Kay.
What does that prove?
That you don't need to be a double gold medalist to beat Kay Scotch because Desley Robinson did it. That you don't need to be a 4-weight, 5-weight world champion, 3-time undisputed. You don't need to be the greatest woman of all times to beat Kay Scotch because Desley did it, and she's none of those things.
Desley's in the same age bracket as Kay.
How many 40-year-olds does Clarissa have to pounce on before you get the point? You're trying to force people to be as enamored with her as you are. Danielle Perkins, in her 40s. Now Kay Scotch, in her 40s.
These women in their 40s that never seem to have much pro experience. They never seem to have that many fights. And I've actually seen Kay Scott fight.
But I don't think you have, because if you had, you wouldn't be coming up to me with this bullshit. She's slow, defense is leaky. That's why she ended up having 2 fights with Desley Robinson, 2 fights with Olivia Curry.
Write another paragraph, motherfucker.
Write 2 of them. People still don't know who Kay Scott is, and the ones that do, like me, know. This may as well be a showcase fight. If people are talking about Clarissa, it ain't gonna be because she fought Kay Scott or because she beat Kay Scott.
I'd wager that if Clarissa ends up trending this weekend, it's gonna have more to do with the diss track that Remy Ma just dropped about her than anything to do with Kay Scott.
You have to misrepresent Clarissa Shields, otherwise you're not gonna have anything to say. It's the same with the ticket sales.
Oh, look at how good the tickets are selling.
You've got Ray J, you've got Orlando Brown, you've got some reality TV stars and influencers also on the bill, and that might have something to do with that, but you're gonna present it as all being about Clarissa and Kay Scott.
Oh, is that supposed to be a big fight?
Who the fuck are you kidding? There's boxing fans out there, all they watch is boxing, and they don't even know this broad.
There's boxing fans out there, some of them that actually watch the girls, and they don't know this broad. Now, me that watches all of them, and all of it, I know Kay Scott. I know exactly who it is. That's why I know Clarissa's got to talk her up, because beating her is nothing to write home about. Desley Robinson already did that. People didn't know her.
Why are you mad?
Because I told the truth? Because I told the whole story?
Why are you mad?
Because I provided the context that you willfully left out?
Why are you mad?
Because you've got an inferiority complex that you keep coming here, and you need for me to agree with you, otherwise you're in your tits about it. If you like Clarissa so much and you're so satisfied with who she's fighting, that should be enough that you don't need to keep coming here and telling me about it. I know more about it than you do.
Imagine me coming across a channel that I disagree with as much as he disagrees with me, and then consistently coming back to it day after day, weeks, months.
Coming back to it, that sounds a lot like the pursuit of validation.
You were so sure of yourself and what you're saying, and if you believed it, you wouldn't have to keep coming back here to tell me, trying to invalidate what I'm saying, but you can't. Because everything I've said is not only true, it's with all the context that would never come from you.
In men's middleweight news, you may have heard the WBO has officially ordered Hamza Sheeraz versus Janibek Alimkhanuly. Now, this is a fight. The WBO has ordered Sheeraz to defend his super middleweight world title against unified middleweight champion Alimkhanuly, with the pair given only 20 days to reach an agreement before purse bids are called.
Some people might call that a good thing, that a fight like that is being forced to come together so fast, while others are having a more adverse reaction. Veteran boxing scribe Carlos Linares said, "This is what's killing boxing." In February, the organization announced a one-year suspension, retroactive to December 2nd of last year, which should have kept him suspended until December of this one. The original ruling also stated that reinstatement required both the expiration of the suspension period and full compliance with the imposed conditions. However, the WBO now says the suspension was terminated effective July 10th after determining that Alimkhanuly satisfied those conditions.
We've often talked about the uniqueness of Janibek Alimkhanuly's situation, which does differ from most other doping scandals we've come across. Carlos continued.
There is an important regulatory detail here in its February ruling. The WBO expressly retained continuing jurisdiction over the matter, while its regulations also give the Championships Committee broad authority to make exceptions or variations when deemed appropriate. In other words, the WBO leaves procedural room to revisit and modify its own decisions at their whim.
Well, that's not just the WBO. All the alphabets operate that way. The question should be, is there any real reason to give Janibek Alimkhanuly this kind of reconsideration, and I would say there is.
But Carlos continued, that may provide the organization with the regulatory authority to shorten the suspension, but it does not change what happened. In February, the WBO imposed a 12-month suspension. In July, it decided roughly 7 months were enough. The suspension did not expire. It was ended early. Alimkhanuly was then ranked number 2 at super middle and is now being considered for mandatory challenger status. The documents below show both decisions. The WBO should explain why a publicly announced one-year doping suspension was ultimately reduced by nearly 7 months.
I think they already did, Carlos. And either you didn't read through it to know, or you read through it and you don't care. You wish the virtue signal. Because Janibek Alimkhanuly's situation is unique.
More nuanced than most.
And I want to preface everything I'm about to say with this. I personally don't care about doping in the sport of boxing because the people in the sport don't care about it. So I'm not going to stand on a hill dying over it when the fighters are going to keep fighting, the sanctioning bodies are going to keep letting them, and you guys, the ones virtue signaling, you're going to keep watching.
You're harping about it like the night of the fight you're going to boycott it, you're going to skip it, you're not going to watch it to send them a message. You're gonna watch that fucking fight the same as everybody else, the same as me, who doesn't care about doping in the sport.
I don't fucking care.
I don't. And it's because, as far as I'm concerned, after a certain level, I think they're all doping, and everybody just pretends they don't know that.
But they know, and they're okay with it, because they're doping themselves, like Ryan and Connor and all these other guys and some gals that have been busted. It's boxing's dirty little secret. Not that the fighters are doping, but that everybody knows they're doping.
They just pretend not to appear innocent to me and you, to exonerate themselves of culpability for something they're also doing. The anti-doping testing, it's not about cleaning up the sport. It's about handicapping your opponent.
It's about making it difficult for them to use their gear while you stay on your own, so the night of, you've got the edge. That is my purview. That's just what I think, and that's why I'm not hung up on doping in the sport of boxing anymore, let alone Janibek Alimkhanuly's case. That is different from most.
How so?
In these situations, the fighter is tasked with the responsibility of providing clarification as to how a banned substance would have found their way into their system without prior knowledge, and for what reason should they be exonerated of culpability. In Janibek's case, the meldonium found in his system was the byproduct of a prescription drug he was prescribed after an emergency room visit in Kazakhstan, where meldonium as a drug goes by a different name.
Mildronate.
So meldonium you may have heard of, but mildronate, if you're not familiar with that name, you're not going to know. It's just meldonium. Not dissimilar from what happens here with Tylenol. otherwise known as acetaminophen in the United States, where it goes by a different name in the United Kingdom. Over there, it's called paracetamol. Most Americans don't know that.
Depending on the country you're in, the drug you use may go by a different name.
The necessary medical documentation to corroborate Janibek Alimkhanalai's account of events was provided to the WBO months ago, and all things considered, compared to some other explanations we've heard in the last decade or so of boxing, Luis Ortiz saying that the drug found in his system came from eating horse meat. He was so hungry he could eat a horse. Or Jarrell Miller saying that the drugs found in his system came from gas station dick pills.
Ryan Garcia blaming tainted supplements for the Osterin they found in his system. First it was the Haney's and Vada set him up, then it came from the supplements, and when that didn't work, he went back to blaming Vada.
Connor Benn's explanation. Rather, the WBC's explanation, because that's where that came from. The basic idea being that Janibek's account of events and the medical documentation provided covers more of the bases that need to be covered than anything I've seen from anyone in recent memory. It explains how that drug found its way into his system, who prescribed it,
Why?
as well as where and how all of this could have happened. If the drug goes by a different name in a different country, a fighter.
They might not know that. The average person doesn't know that.
And even if they did by some chance, it's a prescription drug that was prescribed to him after an emergency room visit. Thus, the burden of proof is thereby satisfied. I think the most dubious element of this ruling, making Janibek Hamza's mandatory, isn't anything to do with meldonium. They've covered those bases. It's Jacob Bank getting passed over.
Who?
Characterized by veteran boxing scribe Dake Jonovan, who said, for the second time this year, the WBO has screwed Jacob Bank out of a title shot. First was their rush to judgment in sanctioning Hamza versus Alembejik mismatch for the vacant title. Now he gets passed over for a fighter who paid minimal, if not zero consequences for a positive drug test.
Jacob Bank fought on the same card as Hamza Sheeraz, and they even had a little mock face-off afterwards, after the decision from Hamza's fight was read. It looked like they were en route to fighting each other, and Jacob Bank was in position to fight Hamza before Janibek.
If there's anything dubious about this situation, it's that given Janibek's circumstances, he should not be getting the shot before Jacob Bank. But the saving grace is that even if he does, Jacob Bank can fight the winner. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
It's not really a big deal.
Not when you think about it. The WBO hasn't given them much time to negotiate this fight and get it done before this year is out. So in all likelihood, we're going to get Janibek versus Sheeraz soon.
Jacob Bank just has to sit tight a while longer, further acquaint himself with the boxing community at large, what he can do, so when he does fight the winner of this fight, it's worth something.
I agree with Jake on this much. I don't think Janibek should be getting the shot before Jacob Bank, but it's not that big a deal because it's easy to remedy. And if anything, schedule Jacob Bank a fight on the undercard of Sheeraz versus Janibek.
As far as the fight itself, Hamza Sheeraz sports professional record of 24 wins with no losses and 1 draw, 19 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 25 professional bouts. He's looked a bit lackluster since his knockout win over Edgar Berlanga, what was arguably the biggest win of his career. Though before that, we remember how he looked with Carlos Adames.
Didn't look good in that fight, and to a lot of people he should have lost. So we remember how he looked with Carlos, and we've seen how he's looked after Edgar. He ain't looked nothing spectacular in his last fight.
Didn't look too hot either.
And so it would seem that the boxing gods are not without a sense of humor, that maybe Hamza has gotten lucky here and there. Lucky in the Carlos Adames fight, in the right place at the right time to become a champion at super middle, but now the chickens have come home to roost in the form of Janibek.
Former unified middleweight champion that sports an unblemished record of 17 wins with no losses and no draws, 12 knockouts, and what is the virtue of now moving up to the super middleweight division, where the fighters may be more willing to face him than the ones at middle.
The super middleweight division comparatively is much, much deeper, many times deeper, with many more good fighters in it than 160. And I don't think they're going to be as squirrely around Janibek as those 160s were. Janibek's bane in trying to fill the shoes of his predecessor, Gennady Golovkin's, is that he has been unable to land that signature fight, that big fight that makes people pay attention. You could argue that he just got it with Hamza.
I don't think Hamza and his team, and I don't think Frank Warren are going to be none too pleased that Hamza, so soon after becoming a champion, is being forced into this situation. You could see that they had their own plans. They likely wanted Hamza to fight Jacob Bank.
Maybe they think Jacob is a bit more beatable than Janibek Alimkhanulai, who was last in action in April of the previous year, and in that way, going into the Sheeraz fight, it will have been well over a year from his last fight. An advantage that goes to Hamza, that Hamza at least has been fighting and has been winning and has been active, so the night of, he may be sharper
Sharper than Janibek.
debuting at a new weight and close to 2 years out from his last fight, because if they fight in the fall, that's closer to 2 years than just one. This past April made 1 year. If they fight in November or December, sometime around there, so that's an advantage that goes to Hamza, as well as the edge in height and length. In case you haven't noticed, Hamza's huge, even for super middleweight. He's got a lot of height, a lot of length, and a lot of power, to where if he can manage the distance against Janibek, who's going to be shaking off ring rust, he can set him up for a big punch, a big shot. I've often said that Janibek Alimkhanulai is a poor man's excuse for Gennady Golovkin, as he doesn't show the same devastating power as his predecessor or the variety of punches. Janibek is a lot more simple, a lot more robotic and repetitive.
What I like most about this fight is that you can make a case for either man to win. It's not a lopsided affair. It's not a foregone conclusion that Hamza wins or Janibek. Because where Janibek goes into this fight with some drawbacks, Hamza does too. Hamza ain't been looking like nothing special.
I don't trust his chin. I think Janibek Alimkhanulai at 168 packs a big enough punch. He could hurt Hamza. He could get him out of there. If he crashes the pocket like Carlos did, he can render Hamza gun-shy like Carlos did.
Hamza could lose this thing.
If he does, a super middleweight title will go to Janibek Alimkhanulai, who I believe is still promoted by Top Rank. What many are highlighting, the Top Rank's fighters have always had a really good relationship with the WBO, and what's happening now could be interpreted as a favor to them.
That is another way to look at it.
But I'm going to be honest, this is one of the better fights on the calendar if they can make it. I feel like boxing is greatly lacking interesting fights. Fights you really want to know what happens, because it's not a foregone conclusion. This would be one among them, and I like it.
I don't care about the drugs.